Hello, this is Bindu Kumar and I welcome you to my channel. This is the third video that explains some of the core concepts and features of Tableau. In case you haven't viewed the first two videos, you will find the links in the description below. In this third and final video on Tableau, we will look at four important features. We will learn about filters and how you can use it to control the volume of data available for analysis. I will demonstrate the difference between a data source filter and a report level filter. Next, we will look at the feature of table alias and how it can be used to query role-playing dimension tables. Then we will learn about the pages feature, which is useful to simulate changes in data over time or over filter values. Finally, we will see how to build visualizations using the maps feature. So let's get started. Hello, hi everyone. So in this session, we are going to continue learning about Tableau. So in the last two videos on Tableau, we have learned the basics of Tableau. We have also covered features such as how to create connections, how to add data sets, defining joins between them. We have learned about the different data types that are represented within Tableau. We have learned about dimensions, measures. We have also seen how to create calculated or derived columns. We have seen how to use an hierarchy how to create hierarchies and then do a roll up, do a drill down. We have also seen what is the meaning of slice and dice. And we have also seen what is continuous versus discrete measures within Tableau and how it impacts the kind of charts that you can create. Okay, so today we are going to look at filters. We are going to look at alias, table alias. We'll also see the features of pages and maps in Tableau. Okay, so let us start with filters first. So here on my screen, you can see I'm using the same dataset as the Adventure Works. I have added all these tables. Let me go to the worksheet. Since I'm using files as a data source, it takes slightly longer. So now that we are here, let us add the sales amount. And from the dimensions, we will add the occupation and the education. And let us change the graph type to a heat map. Okay, now suppose we want to filter this data based on education and occupation, right? So what we'll do is we will drag and drop the occupation into the filters tab here, right? So notice what happens. Now before I drop it, just observe on the right side, there is a legend that appears, right? It's showing the size of the of these boxes, right, correspond to the range of the sales amount, right? Let me change the square to a circle, right? And let us also change influence the color of the circle by the sales amount. So look for the sales amount and drop it on the color, right? And I think this is good enough. We can get started. Now you can see the legend here appear. Okay. Now let's drag the occupation and drop it into the filters box here. Observe what happens on the right side. Okay. All right. So the moment I dropped it, nothing happened on the right side at the moment, right? But it's just giving a pop-up, right? And it's showing what are the values that you want to either include or exclude. So from this, suppose if I unselect manual, that means that we want to exclude manual and show all of the other data. Okay, but just imagine instead of these 5 distinct values, there were 50 distinct values, right? And you wanted to exclude any one of them. it would be hard to do that, right? So which is why Tableau also gives you this option of exclude. Okay, it also gives you exclude. So right now, if I select this, it means apart from manual and professional, it should exclude everything else. Okay, so you can invert the filter if need be. So for now, what we will do is we'll just retain all the values as is. So that's, in other words, we are saying that we want to see the data for all of these. Click on OK. Suppose you want to control it. You don't want to go and edit this all the time. You want to be able to control it as part of the dashboard itself. Just click on this drop down and click on show filter. Now when you do that, you can see there is a filter that appears on the right side, right? So this gives you that interactivity on the dashboard. Now using this, you can control what data you want to see or what you don't want to see, right? You can include and exclude the data. Now this is not only for the occupation, we can let's drag and drop the education as well. Similarly, again, a pop-up will appear. So you can select all the values, click on OK, and then click on show filter. So I see that the occupation, somehow everything is cleared out. So let me select them again, and now you can see the data. So from the education now, if I start filtering out, instead of the columns being filtering, you will see the rows are being filtered out, right? Because it's a two-dimensional table. So any filters you apply on the education, you will see lesser rows. Any filter you apply on the occupation, you will see lesser columns. Okay, so this is how a filter works. Now here there are many different options with which you can control the behavior of the filter. So you can right click, and by default this is the kind of filter that is created. Multiple values represented as a list. Okay, you can also choose this multiple values as a drop down. Okay, so I selected that. See this is very useful when you have a lot of filters, because it saves your screen size, right? It doesn't occupy much space. So now you can accommodate more filters in this screen area. Okay. Similarly, there is single value drop down. Right, suppose you always want to select a single value instead of multiple values, right? Then you can do something like this. See, now education, it won't let me select multiple values. I can only select one value at a time. Okay, so let me change it back to the default, which is multiple values list. Okay. Now, what you see is it's called a report filter. Okay, so you take any dashboarding tool, whether it is Tableau or Power BI, you'll always find two types of filters. What we did right now is called a report filter. Why do we call it a report filter? It means that the data is being filtered out at a report level, right? So in the back end, the data is there for all these values, education, occupation, and everything. It's just that at a report level, we are controlling what data to see or not to see, right? This represents a problem, especially when you're dealing with a very large amount of data. Okay, let me take an example. Imagine you have GBs of data in your database, right? And then you're trying to maybe out of that you need only a million records, or let's say 10,000 records, but you are collecting the entire million records into your Tableau. and then you're applying a filter, and you know that this is the amount of data that you always need. Yet Tableau is fetching all the data from the database, right? So this is a inefficient use of network, of your other resources like CPU, memory, and so on, right? So what if we could filter the data out even before it reaches Tableau, right? Is there a way to tell Tableau that, look, out of this table, I only need this amount of data. I don't need the rest of it, right? So if you do that, then the amount of data that comes into Tableau itself will be very less, which will make your dashboards and all the other operations much more faster. So let's see how we can do that. So to do that, let's go to data source. Now, before we do, let us consider a scenario. Imagine we want to exclude this partial college and partial high school forever, right? We never use this data, so we want to completely exclude it from Tableau. So that way we save the network, we save the other resources as well. So let's go to data sources. Now when you're here, look at the top right, there is something called as filters, right? So this is called the data filter or data source filter. Okay, so what we have seen so far is a report filter. What we are seeing right now is a data filter. And here you can add, and here it just displays the list of all the attributes across all tables. Search for education. So I'm selecting English education. Click on OK. You will see that it is very, very similar to the view filter or the report filter that we looked at. Now here, we'll click on exclude, right? So I chose to invert the filter and I selected partial college and partial high school, and you see it has been striked out. It means that the values that I selected are being excluded, everything else is included. Now click on OK. Right. So this will take few seconds to apply. Now what it's doing is it's recalculating all the data or refetching all the data with this filter applied. Now let's go to the worksheet 1. Okay. Notice that those two values do not appear under education. The data is already filtered out now, right? Earlier, all the data was available, and then we were able to select which data we wanted to see or did not want to see. Now, with filters being applied at a data source level, those records never get fetched into Tableau. Okay, this is especially useful when you're dealing with large amounts of data, but maybe you don't need all the data for your analysis, right? I mean, just imagine, because some databases can have lots of records. There are cases where tables might have 100 million, 200 million records, right? Now, imagine if you just connect to Tableau and if you do not apply a filter, what happens? Tableau, by default, it tries to fetch that entire data into Tableau, which is a very, very expensive operation and a waste of resources, especially if you don't need all the data, right? So it helps if you know what is the data that you're dealing with. So if you're aware of it and if you're sure of it, you can apply this filter, so that way you reduce the amount of data. So any reporting tool, the lesser the data, the faster the operations are, such as aggregations, creating the visualization, and so on. Okay. So this is the difference between a report level filter and a data or a data source level filter. Any questions? Okay. If no questions, we can continue. Next, we are going to look at a feature called alias or a table alias. Okay, so let me show you an example using the AdventureWorks database and see how this feature of SQL can be done in Tableau as well. Right. So to demonstrate this example, let me write a query. So from the fact table, we will get the sales amount. So you can see the amount, it's $29 million. Let us join it with the dim date, because I want to, let's say, group it by the calendar year based on the order date. Okay, so the join will be on date key from the date dimension table, joined with the order date key. Now once I've done this join, from the date dimension we will get the calendar year. Okay, so now you can see that $29 million grouped by the calendar year, right? So you can see the distribution by year. So this is fine, but let us look at the fact table one more time. Do note that there are three attributes. There are three date attributes within the fact table. What we used now was the order date key. See, when an order is placed, there are three dates that are associated with an order. One is the date when the order was placed, the date by when it is due meaning the order needs to be fulfilled by then. Then you have the ship date, the date by when the product is shipped to the customer. So there are three important dates that are captured for every sale in this particular sample data. What we did here is we are joining the fact table to the dimension table on one of those date columns, which is the order date. So that way we can see what is the distribution of sales amount by the calendar year. Now, what if we want to, look at the group not only by the order year but by the shipped year as well, right? So let us actually change, instead of sales amount, to order quantity. Okay, so you can see these many orders were ordered in these particular years. So in 2010 it was 14, in 2011 it was 2216, and so on. But how many were shipped? Were they all shipped in the same year? Right? So to answer this question, we need to make one other join. Okay, and this is how it will work in a SQL. So first I'm going to rename this from dim date dd to OD, right? Ordered or let's say OY, ordered year, right? So this is the alias that I'm giving, and this calendar year we will rename it as ordered year. To this query, we will now join the date dimension one more time. Okay, let's give it a different alias, right? So we are giving it a different alias. This also will join on with the fact table. but on a different column. That column will be ship date key. And let us get that column as well, sy.calendar year as shipped year. Since I added a new column, we should include that in the group by as well. Okay. So now when you run this query, you can see 2 dimensions and 1 metric, right? This is the order quantity. Now here you can see there were 14 units that were ordered in 2010 but shipped in 2011. Right? There were 945 that were ordered in 2013 but shipped in 2014, and so on. So this is how you can use one table multiple times in a query using something called as an alias, which means we are just calling the same table but with different names, because SQL will not let you use the same table with the same name multiple times, right? It will throw an error. Instead, you have to give it a alias. Right? Now, we are going to see how this will work in Tableau. Right? So let's see how the same thing can be achieved in Tableau. So let's start a new worksheet. Go back to the data source. In the data source, you will observe that the fact table and the date dimension are already joined. Let's observe what the join is based on. So click on the line that connects these two. You see it gets highlighted in orange, and at the bottom you can see the columns that are being used to define the join. Now as you can see, it is already joining on the order date, which means this table is acting as the order calendar at the moment. So let us rename it. So to do that, click on this drop down. It might take few seconds. Okay, so I got an error, but it's temporary. Don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to call this order calendar. Okay, now we need a ship calendar as well. So I'm going to drag the dim date one more time. Now here, let's define the joins. So this time we want to join it on the ship date key. Ship date key, and here it will be the, as usual, it will be the date key, which is the primary key for the dim date table. Okay, it's taking slightly longer to process. So once that is done, let me rename the table. So I'll rename this to ship calendar. Okay. So now that we have added both the dimension tables with different joins, let us go to worksheet 2. Here, please do observe that there will be entries for both the tables separately, right? So you can see an order calendar here and also a ship calendar here. But in the back end, these are the exact same tables, right? We are fetching the data from the same table for both of these. So look at the column names, right? Column names also should be the same. But Tableau understands this. That Tableau understands that you're trying to read from the same table, and of course the column names will be exactly the same. So to differentiate, it does this. You see, it added a suffix. So the order calendar was the first table that we created. So it gets to retain the column names as this. But for the second table that we created, which is the ship calendar, it adds a suffix. It adds a suffix of the file name, dimdate.csv1 and so on. Okay, but this is not really good to read or add them as is. So you can control that behavior. So what we will do is, for the calendar year here, let us rename it. So I'll just call it order calendar year. And for the ship calendar, similarly, we will rename it. So that way, there is no conflict in the names. Like this, right? So it appears here. Now let's add the order calendar year and the ship calendar year. Notice that these two are being treated as a continuous value. Let me change it to discrete for both. And then for this, let us add the order quantity from the fact table. Right. So now you can see the same values that we saw in the database, right? So you can see, for example, in 2013, there were 33,499 orders, units that were ordered, and only 615 of them were shipped in 2014. Okay, so in 2012 there were 138 orders that were shipped in 2013, and so on. Okay, so this is how you can create aliases in Tableau as well, which is a very powerful feature, right? It lets you use the same table in different ways based on the requirement. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, if no questions, let's move on to the next topic, which is a page, right? A page. So to demonstrate this, let me add a new worksheet, and let us add the sales amount. Let's pull up a category of the product, and we will convert this into a bubble chart. Okay, so right now what you're seeing is the distribution of sales amount by the category, but this not broken down by year, right? It's just showing the data for all the years that we have, right? So let's go by the order calendar. What we will do is, we will drag and drop the order calendar year into something called as a page. Okay, so the moment I do that, observe the data is filtered now. It's only showing one category. So what exactly is happening, right? See, page is a way of organizing the data based on different values. It is very similar to a filter. Okay, it's very similar to a filter because data is being filtered, right? But for a particular range of values. Okay, and it lets you scroll through the pages as if we would scroll through the pages of a book, right? Trying to look at chapter wise content. Similarly, the visualization is also turned into chapters, and how many chapters, what chapters do we have, is decided by the attributes we place in the pages. Okay, so right now it's the order calendar here, and the moment you add something here, you can see on the right side there is this control that appears. Okay, so right now you can see the value that is selected is 2010. So if you just scroll to the right, you can see how the data is changing over time, right? So back in 2010, these were the sale amount, close to $40,000 back, and now in 2011 you can see it is $4 million, $4.8 million. Okay, and so on and so forth. So as I click through this, you can see the value change. Okay, and suppose you want to play this as an animation, you can do that. Just click on this play icon, and now I'm not doing any clicks. It's just playing it in from the first year to the last year, or to the maximum year that is available. So in this case it's 2010 to 2014. And if you want to run it in a loop, just click on the drop down here and click on loop playback, and you can just click on the play icon. This is not actually a play icon, it's rather forward. Okay, there is a reverse direction as well. So you can stop this anytime and you can click on play in reverse order and it will do that. Okay, and if you want the animation to be a bit slow, or not animation exactly, but the transition from one page to the other page, so you can control the velocity of it, right? This is let's say a bit too fast in this particular scenario. Or you can choose the slowest option available. Okay, so this is what a page is all about. So page lets you organize the data into different pages, so you can navigate through the different pages and see the change in data. This is something that is not available with, let's say, a filter. A filter, there is manual intervention required. You have to constantly apply or enable or disable the filters to be able to see the data. But pages lets you animate through the different values in the range and see how the data changes over time or over values and so on. Any questions with this? If no questions, let's move on to the next topic, which is map. Okay. So let me click on a new worksheet, and we will collapse all of these. Let's look at geography. So when I expand geography, you see certain fields like city, county region code, postal code, and so on. Observe that the icon is special here. It's unlike what we have seen in the last two sessions. This icon, if you observe closely, it looks like a globe, right? So this is Tableau's way of identifying a particular attribute as a geospatial attribute. Geospatial. This is the name given to data types that hold some kind of a location-based information. So for example, name of a country, city, state, zip code, latitude or longitude, yeah. So these are some of the examples of a geospatial data type. Okay. So the moment Tableau encounters such data, it automatically assigns this geospatial data type to them. Okay. And one may ask that, okay, how does it work? How does Tableau know that it is city or state? Very simple. Tableau looks at the column name. Okay, it looks at the column name and it can take a guess based on certain keywords. Like city is a keyword. City is something that is used across languages to denote a city within a state, right? Similarly, country and state and postal code and zip code, right? So Tableau already has this intelligence built in. The moment it detects a column called city, it tries to see that, okay, does it have actually city values? If it does, then it will denote it as a geospatial attribute. Okay. All right. Now, what is the speciality of it? How does it help if it assigns this data type to it? Okay. So you will see that right now. So let me take this IP address locator, because this is not a geospatial attribute. What happens if I just add it to the chart, right? So if I add it to the chart, nothing special. It just appears as any other text data. Correct? So let me remove that and let me add the state province name. Okay. See, the moment I add the state province name, notice that it brings up a map, right? It brings up a map. So I'll explain more about it. So what we'll do, we added the state province name. Let us also add the sales amount. Okay. So we added that, but you don't see any changes to the map. So click on the show me bar, select, instead of a symbol map, let's select a map. Okay, so even then you may not see any changes. That is because it's saying there are 46 unknown values. So click on that, click on edit locations. Right. Now here you can see Tableau is trying to match the state values in your data with the values that it recognizes. Okay, so here it is. It has seen a value of Alberta for a state, but it is not able to find a matching location in its own inbuilt database, right? So that's where we have to look at these two columns. So the state province name has been picked as this. But look at the country region, it is fixed to India, and India doesn't have these states. So what you have to do is click on this. Instead of a fixed value of India, you also tell Tableau that the country can be deduced from an existing field called country region code. Okay. And as you select this, you can actually see a preview of it in the background, right? It's automatically mapping. So let me select this. And here you can see these are the values in our state province name column. Okay, A, U, C, A, D, and so on. And you can see those are being mapped to the matching location. Okay, sorry, my bad. I said state province name. My apologies. It's the country region code. So this is the country region code as in the AdventureWorks data. So that you can see Tableau is automatically mapping to its internal database. Okay. So now if you go back to state province, there are still 16 of them that are not mapped, which is fine. That's okay, right? So let us proceed with the known ones. Now, when you click on OK, do you see some data get highlighted? Right. So let's zoom into that. So I'm just using the scroll bar on my mouse to zoom in. Right. Here you can see the states of the US getting a different shade of a color based on the sales amount. Okay. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have created maps before, but when I used to work for Oracle a couple of years ago, Oracle had a product called Oracle Map Viewer. creating a visualization like this would usually take several days or even weeks. And you might ask why. You see, this map that you're seeing is not exactly, let's say, an image. It's not a bitmap image. It's actually a visualization that is being created, because if you zoom in, you can see the finer lines, the boundaries and everything. Okay, it's not an image, it is actually data driven. So somewhere in the Tableau database, there is data that is being stored that is used to render this map. Okay, now prior to Tableau, this data was not openly available. One had to pay to have this data. So Oracle would would pay to other third party map providers to fetch this data, right? So you had to license them, then only then you could use them to render your maps, and on top of it you could overlay the data that you have. Okay, but thanks to Tableau, they have made all this data easily available through Tableau, right? So you don't have to worry about the maps, you just have to worry about bringing in your data. So assuming you already have the data, right? In this case, we are using AdventureWorks. AdventureWorks is a sample database that has been created by Microsoft, and Microsoft and Tableau are not related. But you can see that if you have the right data, like you have the state, you have the country, you have the city and others, you can easily map it in Tableau. Tableau makes it very, very easy for you to just map the data and start using them. Okay. So here, so you can visualize the sales amount, and just like the other visualizations, you can add more details if need be. For example, you want the tax amount, just drag and drop it on the tooltip. Now if I hover over it, you can see the sales amount and the tax amount. If you want to control the colors of it, of course, click on the color, edit color, and from you can move away from the default into like this, right? So here green being the higher in sales amount, right? The better performing states versus the poor performing states. But not only this, see here you are only visualizing the data that you have, but many times you want to compare this data with other demographic data. Okay, that's where Tableau has this option of something called as map layers. So let me show you. Go to map, go to background layers. Now here you can see some of this information is already selected, like state, province names, borders, and so on. What if you want the terrain? Okay, so if you select that, then if you zoom in, you can actually see the terrain information as well. If you want the county names and borders, okay. But of course, if you zoom out, some of that information may not be available. You will have to zoom in to actually see that information. Okay. So you can choose the level of detail that you need. Okay. So this is about the map layer, and you also have something called as a data layer. Now, what is this data layer? Data layer represents some information that is publicly available and Tableau has collected it for you. For example, the household size or the household income, right? So let me click on the household income. So that is another metric that is now quickly added, right? So this data doesn't exist in any of our data. It's not from AdventureWorks. It's a data that is internally available to Tableau. So Tableau also collects a lot of such publicly available statistics and makes it available for you free of cost. Okay. So this way you can add any of these metrics to your data. Okay. All right. So this is about the maps. And we started looking at data at a state level. Okay, but you can also add the city, provided you have the metrics at a city level or a county level and so on. Right. So this is a preview of the maps feature or the maps visualization in Tableau. But of course, there is a lot more that is possible with this. Any questions? Okay. So with this, we have come to the conclusion on Tableau. Right. We have concluded all the topics of Tableau. So this was meant as just a beginner's tutorial for Tableau, for getting started with Tableau and looking at all the cool features that is possible. But of course, there's a lot more that needs to be explored, and hopefully, I have ignited that spark in you, which which will help you pick up Tableau as a skill. Okay, if you look at the data visualization market, they are really two important dashboarding tools that are very much in demand. One is Tableau, the other is Power BI. Okay, so Power BI is, I feel, it is much more developer centric or power user centric. Tableau, on the other hand, from day one has been built with non-technical users in mind. So I see Tableau as being much more popular with people who don't want to, who don't want to look at it as a programming, rather as a tool where you can experiment and explore and create all kinds of visualizations before you get the right one down. So that's all about Tableau. Thank you for watching the video until the very end. I hope it was easy to understand and learn. Do let me know what you think through comments. If you like the videos, please do hit the like button, share it with friends and colleagues, and consider subscribing. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.